Welcome to the third session on vocabulary instruction. In this video, we are going to explore the art and science of selecting which words to teach. Let's review what we explored last session as it relates to our three tiers of vocabulary. When we pick a word to have students learn, we want to pick a word that we want students to actually use. So, tier one words are those words that students already know. They're words in students' oral and conversational vocabulary. Tier two and three words are what we call academic words. So, tier three words are also known as brick words, and these are content specific. So, if we were chatting about muscle systems, there might be skeletal muscles, cardiac muscles, or smooth muscles. Tier 2 words are what I call mortar words. They are words often for concepts that we must know in order to understand the brick words. So, an example related to muscle systems might be the word function, because different muscles have different functions. So, when we chat about vocabulary and selecting words, if you teach an area, then tier 3 words are the words that we most often want students to learn, such as DNA or dividend. But if students don't know these tier 2 words, such as analyze or formulate, that kind of tie the content together or unlock the concepts, then students are going to have a really difficult time having conversations using your tier 3 words. So, this week we're going to deep dive this very important topic of which words to teach. If we're going to commit to explicit instruction on vocabulary, then we need to make sure that they are going to be impactful words. We want to choose words that are useful. So, is learning this word going to be useful? Will it become a potential mortar word that students can use to unlock powerful discussions or difficult concepts? Is it versatile? Is it a word that students are going to use only once or twice in a single setting? If so, it may not be a very versatile word. Developmentally apt. I won't be teaching the word peripatetic to a first grader, nor would I teach the word tegmentum to a college business major. And then we want to choose words that are not already in Kid Talk. So if students are already using the words in their conversations, there's no need to teach it. Choose a different word. Finding specific words to coach can be tough, so there are some criteria that we can use as filters. The first is importance and utility. We want words that are characteristics of written text and that appear frequently across a variety of domains. So, categorize might be a good example. Lots of things can be categorized: numbers, governments, all sorts of things. Also, we want to look at instructional potential. Words that are more than one dimensional that you can play around with and offer a variety of context to explore. For example, aid doesn't mean much more than help, but establish, though it's similar to the word start, could also mean put on a firm basis, as in and establish a business, or it might mean put beyond doubt, as in establish a person's innocence. So it's a word that can be used in all sorts of activities. Finally, you might choose a word based on a requirement for conceptual understanding. So, words for which students understand the general concept but provide precision and specificity in describing the concept. For example, the idea that there's enough of something is recognized by kids, but that there is a sufficient amount is a more nuanced and mature way of expressing that idea. So, I call these words that unlock concepts. So the character in my book is always putting others before themselves, even when it costs them something. Well, they're altruistic, right? And using the word altruistic, I've just unlocked this entire concept in a single word. And you no longer need sentences upon sentences to use that descriptor or to talk about that concept. So, this session, we're going to deep dive this very important topic of selecting which words to teach. And if we are going to commit to explicit instruction on words, we have to make sure that they are going to be impactful words for students to learn and use. Don't let picking out a few words be the barrier to your vocabulary goals. Instead, look at what you are already doing for inspiration. So zoom in on the books, both fiction and nonfiction, that your students are reading. Look at the concepts that students should learn in your curriculum, and then consider the vocabulary words that they need in order to discuss that information. Or you can look at the words that you use in conversation when discussing your content. That could be the key to unlocking student conversation about those concepts that you teach. You could also look at curated lists of commonly used words by your age group so that you can make sure that students have soaked in words that should already be part of their everyday classroom vocabulary. Take a look at these three text excerpts, read over them, and I want you to select a couple words from each passage that you think you may coach students on. So go ahead and pause this video as you read over and select some words. I won't go over all of the possible choices, but if you have justification for how the words you chose have utility or unlock conversations about concepts, you're probably on the right track. So, the first example, I might choose the word members. If this was a fifth grade, as I read the word member from this nonfiction passage, I know it's a word needed for comprehension to understand family members, but also there were members of a different political party. You'll come up with that in social studies, or cows are members of which group, producers, consumers, or decomposers. That's going to come up in science. So, probably all in the same day. So, that word might be flexible and useful. In the second example, I like two words. I like the word survive or grow because I think that students have surface level meanings that they probably already know and understand, but they have more flexible uses that students may not be as comfortable using, especially in their oral language. So, continuing to live, even through treacherous circumstances, that's a deep idea. And, sure, a flower could grow taller, but students also grow as people, maturing, and social movements grow. So that word has flexibility. And finally, the third passage is a great example of having this is that type of words that students may need to know in order to comprehend what the text is even about. So I wouldn't spend a lot of time teaching these words through vocabulary activities, but I want to make sure that students understood enough of these words for comprehension. So they need to understand that soul is a place and persimmons are a fruit. They need to understand that in order to comprehend what is going on in the passage. Guess what? Think to the language that we know is on our assessments. Getting students to know and understand these can be quite helpful to their success on any test. So these are power words, right? Lower frequency words that have really, really high utility. They are words that cut across curriculum. And an example of this type of word could be the word calculate, right? It's a lower frequency word, but it's a word that could come up in social studies, ELA, math, science. It will cross subjects and it'll cut across a lot of different content. It is a power word and it's one to get into the hands of students so that they can start to understand it and use it. Another example might be tend, right? These numbers tend to get larger, and I tend to think of China as a producer, or this character tends to be this way. Flexible and lots of utility. So let's reflect on a couple things. What are some of the criteria needed for determining whether or not a tier 2 word is suitable to teach students? And select one of the texts that you know that your students will be reading. And I want you to look over that text like we did in our practice, and I want you to find the words that you think students will be likely unfamiliar with or that are not in their tier 1 vocabulary already. I want you to analyze those words, and I want you to pick out which ones that you think would be the most beneficial to provide explicit instruction over.